just to summarize what you were just saying, we need an audit first, and then obviously what's going to be the plan to secure what we are holding.
But if you think about it, like as of last Wednesday, the U.S. just kind of held some random assets on its balance sheet from criminal cases and seizures and forfeitures, and they didn't view it as a strategic thing.
Right.
And then Thursday happens, and suddenly these assets are strategic to the United States. And so it's a complete flip in one day, and you can't blame them for it being, kind of all over the place before that, because the country didn't care about it. Yeah. Now suddenly the country cares about it. And so it's like time to get the house in order and get things straightened out.
Mm. Do you think there's consensus across the country? Does the country care about it? Clearly the administration cares about it. Loomis, Bitcoiners. I feel like there is a good push here, but it's also reaching kind of like a partisan blowback in other corners as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you had Rachel Maddow was talking about, like, oh, now Beanie Babies yeah. bringing that thing back.
Yeah. I remember 2013.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's funny to put it in context. I ran into my landlord on the way out to this today, and I said something. He was asking me, so what do you think of Trump, this and that? I said, well, I just, this SBR with Bitcoin is interesting. He's like, what are you talking about? Which kind of gave me some perspective, like, oh, a lot of people probably have no idea that this executive order exists or what a strategic Bitcoin reserve is. And so I guess that's just it. At the same time, I do think it's a smart thing for our country. I've had conversations with the likes of Matthew Pines and some of the people who have been speaking with our, national security strategists. And I think it's just something that we should be taking seriously, and we should have some Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Yeah.
I think that there's a ton of people that have no idea about this thing. There's some people who know about it and love it. And then there's some people who know about it and they're kind of like, Trump's investing in crypto. What?
Yeah.
And so
Trump does thing automatically bad or good, depending on where you are.
Depending on what side of
But how many people that are not super familiar with why this is something that I think Bitcoiners are supportive of? Not all Bitcoiners. Some Bitcoiners are like, I didn't get into Bitcoin to simp for the government to hold Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin. And, there are, fair conversations to dive into to that degree. But if you're new-ish to Bitcoin and you see this, do you think it's just the knee-jerk, blue-red response, or has there been a little bit of curiosity that where people start to paw at this? Why are we doing this? And they go down the path to actually figure out what this is ultimately trying to get at.
I can't say that I've talked to enough people to give you like my own kind of opinion on based on what I've seen, but logically, there's got to be people on both sides of the aisle that think this is a good thing, right? Because the crypto vote was actually a huge part of the voter base driving real election results this year. And we've seen how much both sides of Congress have shifted towards being crypto favorable. And so that tells you there's something in the wind. There's people on both sides of the political spectrum that care about crypto. And therefore, you imagine both sides of the political spectrum, there's people that feel positively about the SBR.
Yeah.
I'd say just anecdotally, just speaking with people here, I think I've spoken with people on the right and on the left, at PubKey who are, in favor of it, get it, all that kind of stuff. And I would say, on some level, that has to be a microcosm of the broader situation in the United States. Granted, only 20% of the country, 30% of the country owns Bitcoin/crypto. So it's still sort of like a relatively small percentage of the population. But, there's plenty of, I think, the progressive Bitcoiner group and all that kind of stuff. I think there's plenty of people out there on both sides of the aisle that totally get this. I did some of the dates with Stand With Crypto, the organization. I guess it was a PAC that Coinbase helped sponsor. So I was out in some of the swing states. Phoenix, I was out in Arizona, Nevada, and in Pennsylvania. And when I spoke with people on the ground there and just asked sort of what's your political affiliation, they were like, I don't really think about it like that. I'm just supporting the candidates who are going to back, proper crypto policy. So I thought that was kind of shocking. And that wasn't just like the white bros or whatever. That was like some 22-year-old, Vietnamese immigrant and, and just very diverse crowd and people who were, just sort of not necessarily thinking along the sort of the lines that I guess we were all sort of raised thinking along. I think there's sort of a bit of a reorientation going on. And I call it the age of strange bedfellows. I think there's now just sort of this weird aligned incentive now, and it's having people cross party lines and think differently about who they're going to support politically.
Yeah. it doesn't really get that part doesn't really get elevated too much in mainstream media, if at all, right? I mean, Bitcoin Magazine has covered that, I think, exceptionally well, but that story really illuminates what's going on in the background here. They just see forces, right? And they want to fit it into the rubric of, Trump bad does thing, that thing also associated with bad. But when you actually dive into it, it's much more complicated. There's nuance. And people don't really like nuance. I think they like simplicity.